The rickety house on the edge of town barely held together, much like the family that lived inside it. Daniel Harper, born to parents who worked grueling hours at a local factory, didn't remember a time when life wasn't a struggle. The house was always filled with the smell of damp wood and the faint metallic tang of despair. His clothes were hand-me-downs of hand-me-downs, faded, torn, and a size too big or too small. At school, Daniel's appearance was a flashing neon sign for bullies. They called him Raggedy Dan, mocking his unkempt hair, scuffed shoes, and patched-up backpack. Every day was a gauntlet. The laughter of classmates as they tugged at his frayed shirt collar was a soundtrack he couldn't escape. Even the teachers seemed to look at him with pity, though he despised that more than the ridicule. But beneath the dirt-streaked exterior, Daniel had something no one could see, an insatiable curiosity. He spent hours dismantling old radios, clocks, and anything with wires he could find in the neighborhood junkyard. His room, if you could call the corner of the house with a mattress and a single lamp a room, was cluttered with parts of outdated gadgets. His prized possession was a broken computer he had pulled from a dumpster, though it had never powered on. One night, as Daniel sat in the dim light of his lamp, he whispered to himself, "I'll build something great one day. Something no one can laugh at." It was a vow he repeated often, but the path ahead was anything but clear. Would the boy who everyone overlooked ever rise from the shadows? Only time would tell. By the time Daniel turned 13, the relentless bullying had become his daily reality. Every shove in the hallway, every snide comment about his torn shoes, fueled a fire within him. But Daniel didn't lash out, he retreated to the one place where the chaos of the world couldn't reach him, his cluttered corner of the house. One evening, as he stared at the broken computer that had been his constant companion, something clicked in his mind. What if I could make it work, he thought. He didn't have the money for new parts, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. Armed with a rusty screwdriver and scavenged components from discarded electronics, Daniel spent weeks tinkering. Every evening, he'd solder connections, replace corroded wires, and study outdated computer manuals he borrowed from the school library. His mother often found him hunched over the desk at midnight, his face illuminated by the dim glow of his lamp. "What are you doing with that pile of junk, Danny?" she'd ask, worry lacing her voice. "Building something better," he'd reply, without looking up. She never understood what he meant, but she admired his determination. One cold December night, after countless failed attempts, the screen of the old computer flickered to life. Daniel froze, staring in disbelief as the machine hummed softly. "It works," he whispered, his heart pounding. That moment was electric, a spark of validation in a life filled with doubt. For the first time, he felt the power of possibility. Word of Daniel's feat spread in the neighborhood. Neighbors began bringing him their broken radios, TVs, and even an ancient fax machine, hoping that Junk Kid could work his magic. And he did, charging only a few dollars for repairs. Though the money helped keep food on the table, it wasn't the cash that drove him. It was the thrill of solving problems, of making something broken work again. But Daniel's success didn't shield him from ridicule. At school, his classmates mocked his new reputation. "Oh look, it's the junkyard genius," one boy sneered. But Daniel didn't care anymore. Each joke, each shove, was a reminder of why he couldn't stop. His passion was no longer a refuge, it was his weapon, a way to prove them all wrong. As the years passed, Daniel's skills grew sharper. By the time he entered university, he had repaired countless devices and even built a crude but functional computer of his own. It wasn't pretty, but it worked, and for Daniel, that was all that mattered. He didn't know it yet, but the foundations of his future empire were already being laid. Daniel Harper's acceptance to university was a bittersweet triumph. It was the first step toward a life he had only dreamed of, but the cost weighed heavily on his family. His parents had emptied their savings to cover the first semester, leaving nothing for emergencies. "We'll make it work," his mother said, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. Daniel knew they couldn't. On campus, the divide between him and the other students was stark. They strode through the halls in designer clothes, carrying the latest gadgets, while Daniel clung to his patched-up bag, still using the same cobbled-together laptop he'd built years ago. Conversations in class often left him feeling like an outsider. Discussions about vacations in exotic locales or plans for luxurious internships felt like they were from another world. Despite the stark differences, Daniel was undeterred. The campus library became his sanctuary. He devoured books on computer science, programming, and technology trends. He attended every lecture, took meticulous notes, and stayed late into the night working on assignments. Knowledge is my currency, he told himself. And someday, it'll pay off. But even with his unyielding focus, life had its challenges. Balancing work and studies was grueling. Daniel took on every odd job he could find, delivering food, fixing electronics, even cleaning dorms. Yet, his bank account rarely saw double digits. Sometimes, the cafeteria staff would slip him extra food, sensing his struggles, and he always accepted with quiet gratitude. In his third year, Daniel's computer science professor assigned a group project to design a functional prototype of an app. Daniel was paired with two other students who were friendly but clearly skeptical of his abilities. "You've got the coding, right?" one of them asked during their first meeting. The unspoken assumption was clear, they thought he'd be the weak link. Determined to prove them wrong, Daniel poured himself into the project. Nights turned into mornings as he worked tirelessly to create an app that not only met the requirements but exceeded them. When the project was finally presented, the professor's praise was effusive. "This is the kind of innovation that could become something big," he remarked, glancing meaningfully at Daniel. The professor's words lingered in his mind. The app they had built was good, but Daniel saw something even bigger, a business idea. He began sketching out plans for a startup, one that could leverage his skills and passion for technology. But doubt crept in as he stared at his empty bank account. How could he build something when he could barely afford his next meal? That night, as he walked back to his dorm under a sky full of stars, he whispered to himself, "If I don't take the risk now, when will I?" It was the beginning of a dream that would change everything. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the potential of the app he had helped design in class. It wasn't just a school project anymore, it was the seed of something transformative. The app, initially designed as a platform for students to collaborate on projects in real time, had features that Daniel believed could be scaled far beyond the academic world. What if this could help companies? Freelancers? Teams scattered across the globe? The possibilities felt endless, and with each passing day, the vision became clearer. But vision alone wouldn't pay the bills or build the infrastructure. He needed funding, and he needed a team. Daniel began to approach classmates and professors he trusted, pitching his idea with the kind of passion only born from desperation and hope. Most were polite but dismissive. "It's ambitious," they'd say, "but have you thought about how much competition is out there? Google, Microsoft, how would you compete?" Despite the rejection, one classmate, Priya, saw the potential in Daniel's idea. She was a design wizard, known for creating sleek, intuitive interfaces. "If you're serious about this," she said after hearing his pitch, "I'm in. But we'll need more than just code and design to make this work." Together, they brainstormed for hours in the corner of the library, sketching out workflows and features on scrap paper. Daniel focused on the technical backbone, ensuring the app would be fast, secure, and scalable. Priya worked on user experience, crafting interfaces so simple even a technophobe could use them. But the biggest hurdle was still money. Daniel and Priya pooled their meager savings, barely enough to cover the costs of basic servers. They began coding furiously, working long hours in the campus computer lab. They survived on instant noodles, cheap coffee, and sheer determination. The nights were grueling. Bugs in the code would take hours to fix, and arguments flared over features and deadlines. "We can't launch something half-baked," Priya would insist. And we can't spend forever perfecting it when we've got no money, Daniel would counter. Yet, no matter how heated their disagreements, they always came back to the same goal, getting the app off the ground. After months of relentless work, they had a functioning prototype. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The app, named Collabify, allowed users to create virtual workspaces where teams could share files, chat, and track progress, all in real time. It was simple, efficient, and, most importantly, affordable compared to competitors. Daniel's hands trembled as he clicked the button to launch their beta version online. "Here we go," he muttered. Priya leaned over his shoulder, her face a mix of exhaustion and excitement. The initial response was underwhelming. A handful of downloads trickled in. Days passed, and the numbers barely climbed. Doubt began to creep in. Had they miscalculated? Was the app too niche? Daniel refused to give up, but the pressure of failure loomed like a storm cloud. Then, one evening, everything changed. A tech blog stumbled upon Collabify and wrote a glowing review, praising its simplicity and potential for remote teams. The headline read, "The student-built app that could revolutionize remote work." Within hours, downloads surged, and emails from curious users and potential investors flooded Daniel's inbox. As he stared at the growing numbers, his heart raced. "This is it," he whispered, hardly able to believe it. Collabify had taken its first step toward changing Daniel's life forever. But the road ahead was still uncertain, and the stakes were about to get even higher. The overnight attention Collabify received was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Daniel and Priya barely had time to process the influx of users before they were hit with a barrage of issues. Bugs they hadn't anticipated began surfacing as more people logged onto the app. Features crashed under the unexpected load, and complaints started rolling in. "This thing keeps freezing during file uploads," one user tweeted angrily. Others posted reviews calling Collabify promising but unstable. Daniel felt like the walls were closing in. Every moment he wasn't sleeping, which was most moments, he was glued to his screen, patching code and responding to user concerns. Priya worked just as tirelessly, redesigning interfaces and handling customer feedback with remarkable patience. "We can't let this break us," she said one night, her voice firm despite the dark circles under her eyes. As they scrambled to stabilize the app, another problem emerged: money. Their server costs were skyrocketing with the increased traffic, and their savings were nearly gone. "We're going to run out of cash in weeks at this rate," Priya said grimly, pointing at their dwindling account balance. Daniel knew she was right. Without funding, Collabify wouldn't survive long enough to realize its potential. They needed investors, but finding someone to back a fledgling startup run by two broke university students wasn't easy. Rejections poured in from venture capitalists who dismissed the app as too risky or not unique enough. One day, as Daniel scrolled through his emails, a subject line caught his eye: "We'd like to chat about Collabify." It was from a mid-sized tech company that specialized in project management tools. The email was brief but clear: they were impressed by the app and wanted to schedule a call to discuss potential investment opportunities. Daniel's pulse quickened. This was their chance. But excitement quickly gave way to doubt. What if they didn't have the answers the company was looking for? What if they wanted to buy Collabify outright and strip them of control? The thought of handing over his dream to someone else made his stomach churn. The day of the meeting arrived, and Daniel dressed in his only decent shirt, borrowed a tie from a classmate, and logged into the video call with Priya by his side. The representative from the tech company, a sharp-dressed man named Alan, introduced himself with a smile. "We've been watching Collabify," he said, "and we think it has potential." The conversation was tense but productive. Alan asked tough questions about their business model, long-term goals, and plans for scalability. Daniel answered as best as he could, drawing on every ounce of knowledge he had gained from years of self-teaching and countless late nights. By the end of the call, Alan leaned back in his chair and said, "You've got something special here. We'd like to offer an investment of $250,000 in exchange for a 20% stake in your company. Daniel's heart raced. The money would solve their immediate problems, but giving up 20% felt like giving away part of his soul. Can we think about it? Priya asked, and Alan agreed to give them a few days to decide. That night, Daniel and Priya debated endlessly. This could keep us afloat and help us grow, Priya argued. But it's a big chunk of the company, Daniel countered. In the end, they made their choice. They would accept the deal but negotiate the terms to retain more control over the app's direction. The next day, they sent their counteroffer, and after a tense back and forth, they reached an agreement, $250,000 for a 15% stake. With their first investment secured, Collabify had the lifeline it needed. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The stakes were higher than ever, and with success came even greater challenges. He wasn't just trying to prove himself anymore, he was building something that others were beginning to believe in. The $250,000 investment was a game-changer. For the first time, Daniel and Priya could afford the tools and manpower they desperately needed. They rented a small office just off campus, hired 2 junior developers, and upgraded their servers to handle the app's growing user base. The move from a scrappy student project to a legitimate business was exhilarating, but it also came with a mountain of pressure. Collabify's user base grew rapidly as word spread. Small businesses, freelancers, and remote teams flocked to the platform for its intuitive interface and competitive pricing. But with growth came complexity. Daniel and Priya had to juggle software updates, customer support, and investor expectations, all while finishing their final year of university. The demands were relentless. Daniel often slept on a makeshift cot in the office, waking up to the hum of servers and the glow of his laptop screen. Priya was the voice of reason, reminding him to eat and occasionally dragging him out for a breath of fresh air. "You're not going to build an empire if you burn out first," she'd say. Despite the grueling pace, Daniel couldn't suppress his excitement. He saw possibilities everywhere. He envisioned Collabify as more than just a collaboration tool, it could become a hub for innovation, a platform where ideas were born and brought to life. One day, as he was sketching out ideas on a whiteboard, Priya interrupted him. "We need to talk about pricing," she said. "The free tier is great for attracting users, but it's not sustainable. We need paying customers to keep the lights on." Daniel had resisted monetizing the app too early, fearing it would scare off users. But Priya was right, they couldn't survive on investor money forever. After weeks of deliberation, they introduced a subscription model. The basic features would remain free, but premium tools, like advanced project analytics and customizable dashboards, would be available for a modest monthly fee. The decision was a gamble, but it paid off. Users embraced the premium features, and for the first time, Collabify was generating revenue. The influx of funds allowed Daniel to expand the team further, bringing on marketing and sales experts to help grow their brand. But success came with new challenges. Larger competitors began to take notice of Collabify's rise. Some reached out with acquisition offers, dangling multi-million-dollar deals in front of Daniel. It was tempting, especially when the stress of running the company felt unbearable, but he couldn't shake the feeling that selling too soon would mean abandoning his vision. Priya supported his decision to hold out. "We're building something bigger than a paycheck," she said. "Let's see how far we can take it." As Collabify's reputation grew, so did its impact. A non-profit in Africa used the platform to coordinate disaster relief efforts, and a small startup in Europe credited Collabify for helping them secure a major funding round. Stories like these reminded Daniel why he had started in the first place, to create something that mattered. Still, the road ahead was steep. Competitors with deep pockets were rolling out similar features, and maintaining their edge would require constant innovation. Daniel and Priya knew they couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. Late one night, as they worked side by side in the office, Priya glanced over at Daniel. Do you ever think about where we'll be in 5 years? She asked. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes tired but determined. Every day, he replied. And I'm not stopping until we get there. The dream was alive, but the journey was far from over. The next chapter of Collabify's story would be its toughest yet. Success, Daniel quickly learned, was as much a battle as failure. Collabify's meteoric rise had painted a target on its back. Larger companies, with resources that dwarfed Daniel's fledgling team, began rolling out their own collaboration tools, many of which mimicked Collabify's features. The first blow came when a tech giant launched a direct competitor, offering a free year of premium services to its existing user base. Collabify's growth slowed almost overnight, as users hesitated to commit to the small, unproven platform when a massive corporation was offering a seemingly unbeatable deal. Daniel was furious, pacing the office late into the night. They're trying to squeeze us out, he fumed. Priya, ever pragmatic, put a hand on his shoulder. We can't outspend them, Daniel. But we can outthink them. They doubled down on customer engagement, sending personalized emails to their users and creating tutorials to showcase the unique ways Collabify could solve problems. Daniel even began hosting live webinars to connect directly with users. If we're small, he said, we'll use it to our advantage. Let's be the platform that actually listens. But the competition wasn't the only challenge. Behind the scenes, cracks were beginning to show in the team. Long hours and mounting stress were taking their toll. One of their developers quit, citing burnout, while a marketing hire clashed with Priya over the direction of their campaigns. The tension came to a head during a heated meeting about the app's next update. We need to focus on stability, argued one developer. We're getting killed by bugs. Priya disagreed. If we don't roll out new features, we'll fall behind the competition. Daniel listened as the team bickered, his own frustration boiling over. Enough, he finally shouted. We're not going to survive if we tear ourselves apart. Stability and innovation aren't mutually exclusive, we'll do both, but we have to work together. His words seemed to resonate, and the team rallied. They divided responsibilities, prioritizing bug fixes while simultaneously developing a groundbreaking feature, real-time AI project suggestions. The AI tool, named Clever Collab, analyzed user behavior to provide actionable insights, helping teams work smarter and faster. The feature launched with a bold marketing campaign that Priya spearheaded, targeting niche communities that larger competitors had overlooked, nonprofits, startups, and remote educators. Slowly but surely, users began returning to Collabify, drawn by the unique value the AI tool provided. The turnaround was a relief, but the scars of the struggle remained. Daniel started waking up in cold sweats, haunted by dreams of the company collapsing. Priya, too, confessed to feeling the weight of expectations. I've never been this tired, she admitted one night as they worked late. But I've also never been this proud. Collabify had survived its first true battle, but Daniel knew it wouldn't be the last. The tech world was ruthless, and the fight for survival would be a constant one. Yet, in the face of every challenge, Daniel's resolve only grew stronger. He wasn't just building an app, he was building a legacy. The turning point for Collabify came from an unexpected source. One evening, as Daniel scrolled through user feedback, a message caught his eye. It was from a small NGO working in a disaster-stricken region. The email read, "Your platform helped us coordinate relief efforts and save lives. Thank you." Daniel stared at the screen, his chest tightening. For all the stress and setbacks, this was the validation he needed. Collabify wasn't just a product, it was a tool that could make a real difference in people's lives. He forwarded the email to the team with the subject line, "Why we do this." Inspired, Daniel and Priya decided to lean into this newfound purpose. They launched a campaign called Collabify for Good, offering free access to nonprofits and social initiatives. The move wasn't just altruistic, it was strategic. These organizations often operated in tight-knit communities, and their success stories could amplify Collabify's reputation far beyond what any ad campaign could achieve. The strategy worked. Tech blogs picked up on Collabify's efforts, praising the platform's commitment to making a positive impact. The glowing reviews reignited interest, bringing in waves of new users and cementing Collabify's image as a company with heart. But success brought new pressures. Investors, buoyed by the platform's resurgence, began pushing for aggressive growth. "It's time to expand," one of them said during a board meeting. "You've proven the model works. Let's scale this thing globally." Scaling, however, came with enormous risks. It meant hiring more staff, investing in international servers, and tackling unfamiliar markets. The financial stakes were higher than ever, and one wrong move could spell disaster. Still, Daniel knew they couldn't stay stagnant. With the board's approval, Collabify launched localized versions of the app in Europe, Asia, and South America. They also partnered with universities and co-working spaces to expand their reach into new demographics. The gamble paid off. Collabify's user base exploded, doubling within a year. Revenue soared, and the company began turning a healthy profit for the first time. Daniel and Priya celebrated the milestone with their team in the office, raising paper cups filled with cheap champagne. "This is just the beginning," Daniel said, a rare smile lighting up his face. Despite the rapid growth, Daniel refused to let success change his priorities. He made it a point to respond to emails from users personally, often working late into the night. "They believed in us when no one else did," he said. "We owe them everything." But as Collabify reached new heights, whispers of acquisition offers began swirling again. One day, a representative from a major tech conglomerate visited their office with a proposal, $50 million for full ownership of Collabify. The offer sent shockwaves through the team. For Priya, who had sacrificed so much to build the company, the idea was tempting. "We could finally breathe, Daniel," she said. "You wouldn't have to carry this weight anymore." But Daniel's gut told him otherwise. "If we sell now," he said, "it'll stop being ours. They'll turn it into just another product. Collabify is more than that, it's a promise we made to ourselves and our users." The team supported his decision to decline the offer, though it wasn't without trepidation. Daniel knew he was walking a tightrope, but for him, the mission was clear. Collabify wasn't just a stepping stone to wealth, it was his life's work. As he stared out the office window that night, the city lights twinkling below, he whispered, "We're not done yet. I'm reckless." Investors expressed cautious optimism but began to apply subtle pressure, hinting that another rejection without substantial growth might jeopardize their confidence. "You have to prove this wasn't a mistake," one investor warned. Daniel felt the weight of their expectations more than ever, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he poured his energy into the next phase of Collabify's evolution, integration with emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence, blockchain for secure file sharing, and advanced analytics were buzzwords in the industry, and Daniel knew they needed to stay ahead of the curve. The team dove in headfirst. Late nights returned with a vengeance, and the office became a second home once more. Daniel himself led the charge, working closely with developers to ensure the new features were as groundbreaking as promised. Priya spearheaded the marketing efforts, crafting campaigns that promised innovation and reliability in a world where trust in tech companies was waning. As the updates rolled out, Collabify experienced its most significant growth yet. Enterprises began adopting the platform, drawn by its robust AI project management tools and the transparency of its blockchain-powered security. Media outlets started calling Collabify a disruptor, and competitors scrambled to keep up. But even with the accolades, the challenges didn't stop. Running a global operation was an entirely new beast. Cultural differences and regulatory hurdles in international markets slowed expansion efforts. Customer support teams struggled to keep up with the influx of new users, and bugs in the new features drew criticism from some corners. The team held emergency meetings almost daily. Priya became a master of triage, allocating resources where they were most needed, while Daniel played the role of motivator, reminding everyone of how far they'd come. "This is a storm," he told his team during one particularly tense meeting. But storms don't last forever. Despite the chaos, one thing remained constant: Collabify's ability to adapt. They hired regional experts to navigate international regulations and invested heavily in their support infrastructure. Slowly but surely, they turned the tide, regaining their footing and silencing critics. One day, as Daniel was reviewing user data, he came across a report that stopped him in his tracks. Collabify had officially reached 10 million active users. He leaned back in his chair, a wave of emotion washing over him. This wasn't just a milestone, it was validation of everything he and Priya had sacrificed. That evening, the team gathered in the office to celebrate. Unlike their modest early victories, this celebration was grand. There were catered meals, live music, and even a slideshow of their journey from day one. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he stepped forward, holding a glass of champagne. "We started this in a dorm room with nothing but an idea and a lot of heart," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. "We've been called crazy, reckless, and naive, but look at us now. Collabify isn't just a company, it's proof that resilience and belief in something bigger can move mountains. And we're just getting started." Cheers erupted, but as the team celebrated, Daniel couldn't help but think of what lay ahead. For all their success, the stakes had never been higher. He knew that staying on top would demand even more of him, of Priya, and of everyone who had helped build Collabify into what it had become. The journey wasn't over. It was evolving, just as it always had. And Daniel wouldn't have it any other way. As the years passed, Collabify grew into a household name. What started as a small university project had transformed into a global enterprise with millions of users, partnerships with Fortune 500 companies, and a reputation for innovation and integrity. Yet, through all the growth, Daniel Harper remained true to the values that had shaped him, the same values born from his tough childhood and relentless pursuit of purpose. By now, Collabify was more than just a tool for collaboration, it was an ecosystem. The platform had expanded to include AI-driven innovation hubs, training modules for skill development, and even tools designed specifically for educators and nonprofits. Its reach spanned industries and borders, touching lives in ways Daniel had once only dreamed of. But success had come at a cost. Daniel rarely took time for himself, pouring every ounce of energy into the company. Priya, ever his trusted partner, often reminded him to step back and enjoy the life he had built. "You're not just building Collabify," she said one evening as they walked through the sprawling headquarters. "You're building a legacy. But what's the point of a legacy if you don't live to see it?" Her words struck a chord. For the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to reflect, not just on the company but on his personal journey. He thought of the boy who had been bullied for his tattered clothes, the late nights spent fixing broken machines, and the moment he turned on that first salvaged computer. Each struggle, each sacrifice, had led him here. It wasn't long before Daniel began to take a step back from the day-to-day operations of Collabify. He appointed a trusted CEO to oversee the company's growth while he focused on what mattered most, giving back. Daniel launched the Harper Foundation, dedicated to providing underprivileged kids with access to technology and education. "Every child deserves the chance to dream big," he said at the foundation's launch. "And I want to help make those dreams possible." Priya remained a vital part of his life and work, serving as an advisor to both Collabify and the foundation. Together, they traveled the world, speaking at conferences, mentoring young entrepreneurs, and visiting communities that had benefited from Collabify's outreach programs. One day, as Daniel stood on the stage of a packed auditorium at a global tech summit, he reflected on the road that had brought him there. The crowd hung on his every word as he recounted the journey, the failures, the triumphs, the lessons. He ended his speech with the same message he had carried with him since childhood. Your circumstances don't define you. They challenge you. They shape you. But they don't own you. If a kid who was laughed at for his dirty clothes and broken shoes can stand here today, then so can anyone else. All it takes is belief in yourself and the courage to chase something bigger. The audience erupted in applause, but for Daniel, the applause wasn't what mattered. What mattered was knowing that somewhere, someone was sitting in the audience, feeling the same spark he had felt all those years ago, a spark that could one day change the world. As Daniel walked off the stage, Priya met him with a smile. "What's next?" she asked. He grinned, a glimmer of the scrappy, determined boy he once was shining through. "Let's see how much more good we can do." And so, Daniel Harper's story continued, not as the untidy boy who had been mocked for his dreams, but as the man who had turned those dreams into a legacy that would endure for generations.